You are listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Megan and Alex of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you have come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, we use the 4 phases of the feminine cycle in combination with functional lab work to transform the lives of the women we work with. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own doctor before making changes. Ready to take control of your health? Let's get started.
Hi there, this is Alex with you. Thank you so much for joining me. We are going to do our 14th podcast, which last time I said was the 14th, but I was lying. It was really the 13th. This is the 14th. We're going to be talking about birth control. All right, so we get lots and lots and lots of questions about how birth control plays a role in the setting of the cycle. And this will sort of also lead us into talking about what to do when you don't really have a cycle and you're using excess or exogenous hormones, and exogenous means just outside of your body, so things that you take. And so we'll talk about all of that. So we have a little bit of a mixed bag with birth control because a lot of people are on it. Just so many women have been treated with birth control for a variety of reasons, and it kind of seems like no matter what you go into the doctor with, just in my own experience, I can't speak for you, but in my own experience, like no matter what you go in with a symptom or a complaint or an experience to the ladies doctor, the OBGYNs, the answer that you get is birth control. And I have had a very kind of developing experience with birth control because I really hated it for a long time. I felt like my experience with taking birth control made my pain worse, made all my hormonal problems worse, all of that stuff. And it has taken me a long time, in the order of years, to have a different experience with birth control and supplemental hormones that is now more positive, and I feel like now I am a much more balanced clinician as a result, but it really took me a while to get here. So that's us, and Megan and I both just sort of understand the utility of it, but we want to find more answers than birth control can provide us, and so that's what we're going to talk about. So the number one thing I want to answer that we get asked all the time is, well, I understand the benefits of syncing with your cycle. I'm all on board, but I'm on birth control, so I don't think I can do it. And our answer is always, you can absolutely do it, and not only can you do it, but it's really, really helpful if you do it when you're on birth control, because when you're adding an outside source of hormones, it's really important to support your body in both the inflammatory cascade, that first half of the cycle, and that detoxification phase, because all of those hormones that you're taking, it's important that you metabolize them properly, so process them and then get them out of the body. If along the way there are breaks in the way that we're supposed to process this medication, because it is a medication, then you're going to run into side effects and issues down the road. And so for us, we recommend doing it this way. And when we do the work with all of our ladies, we generally have them start doing the cycle syncing stuff while they're on birth control, and then when they want to transition off birth control, that's when this stuff becomes even more important and plays a larger role. And then usually in doing that at the time, you can mitigate a lot of the problems that happen from coming off birth control. And there is a safe way to get off birth control, and then there's the way where you just stop it and hope that you can deal with everything that happens, and that's generally not an approach that we love. So that is all. So let's talk about birth control and how it functions within the entire world of hormone health and hormone balancing and women's health in general. The way that I see birth control and supplemental hormones is that it is an intervention when your state of symptoms is so severe that you need an intervention right now to help support you. When you get to the point where you are having such heavy periods that you're anemic, or if you have such bad pain that you're just completely paralyzed for like 2 days out of the month, or your endometriosis is so bad that you have just uncontrolled pain all the time, or any of that, right? So I have gotten to the point where I have had spotting so bad for so long that I finally was like, I need extra estrogen and progesterone. I had estrogen patches and progesterone pills. I've also done the cream, or not the cream, the like vaginal suppository, and it really helped. But I understood that what I was doing was I was intervening on my symptoms. I was not helping the root cause. And what people find is that they seem to think that, okay, I had problems and then I went on birth control, and then 2 years later when I went on birth control, things got worse. So it must have been the birth control that made things worse. When in reality, what most commonly ends up happening is that you started having problems, and then when you went on birth control, those problems, even though you weren't having as severe symptoms, those underlying problems continued to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And when you took away that cover up of the symptoms, all of a sudden you're left with the reality of what your underlying physiology and what has been going on in your body the entire time. So it may appear that it got worse, but that isn't necessarily the case. Now, it is true that some people just really don't do well with birth control, but I would not say that that is the more common version. The more common version is that what you were using birth control for was essentially, it like puts a bracket on your endocrine system, and it says, okay, endocrine system, these are the parameters. Here is a static input, and then your body tries to work around that. But the thing is, the body is much more complex than any aspect of that birth control, even the birth controls that now have higher and lower levels depending on where in your cycle it is. Obviously, what they're trying to do there in doing that is they're trying to mimic the ebb and flow of the cycle, just like how we're talking about. But instead of putting that bracket and expecting our body to fall in line with that, most of the time there's enough damage accrued that in and of itself doesn't actually balance anything out. I think maybe if you're really, really early on in your supplemental hormones may be actually able to impact, but I think by the time most of us get to birth control or supplemental hormones, that in and of itself will not do anything to fix the underlying problem. And what you're doing is just holding the endocrine system in one particular place that you've chosen based on, which birth control you chose, which dose of hormones you picked, and then you hope that the body simply balances around it. And unfortunately, that's not exactly what happens. For the most part, while you have this input and you're asking the body to have a certain input, underneath well, that may appear to happen, like you take birth control and you don't have spotting anymore. The thing is, all of those underlying factors like dysregulated inflammation, like poor detoxification, poor glucose metabolism, dysfunctional ovarian signaling, all of that is still happening under the surface. And until you address those things, it's really not going to get much better. So we want to look at birth control as a tool that we have at our disposal. We do not want to vilify it in a way where people need it because they're miserable, but they refuse to take it. I honestly don't think that that's the best approach either. I know not everyone will agree with me, but in my opinion, there is a time and place for conventional medicine. Obviously, I'm a little biased being an MD, but I think conventional medicine has wonderful things to offer us. And birth control and exogenous hormones can be one of those things, but we have to recognize their limitations and realize that there's a lot more going on. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. In general, if someone is on birth control, we recommend, and they want to work on their hormones, a lot of the testing that we do looks a little like, we like the Dutch test a lot, and we always pair our hormone testing with neurotransmitter testing, because if the input from the brain is telling your endocrine system that you're on high alert all the time, it's going to be really hard to just tell the kidneys to chill, or the adrenals to chill out, because that signal never went away just because you're giving things to help them chill out. You have to address the actual underlying thing. And so we always do the Dutch test, and we do neurotransmitter profiles. And with that combination, we generally kind of get funky results on birth control, but it can be done. And then a lot of that information can be used to make protocols to help people transition off birth control. Or sometimes people will start doing the cycle syncing stuff, transition off the birth control, and then do the Dutch testing and neurotransmitter profiles. You can really approach it either way, but usually it helps to have testing involved. I think if it were me, and you're listening to this and you are on birth control, if it were me, what I would personally do is start syncing up my cycle in the way that we've been talking about in these pod classes, and then transition off the birth control, and then reapproach some testing, and do a personalized specific protocol for what's going on. That is just my personal preference, but there's lots of ways to approach this depending on which practitioner you see and which practitioner you're going to be working with. And so that's all fine. As far as extra hormones that people, so hormone replacement therapy, where you're taking birth control at specific times in the cycle, I've also done that. For the most part, this is done in the luteal phase. So in my case, I had very, very low estrogen and progesterone in the second half of the cycle. So I had the first half looked pretty good. I could mount a signal to the ovaries to ovulate. I could ovulate, but then I couldn't really mount that response to make hormones in the second half. And I would just go from my period. Then I would have a week. That phase 2 would be just fine, which is probably why the rise phase is my favorite. And I was spotting for another 2 weeks, and then my period again. So it felt like I was constantly spotting, which is a miserable place to be. And at that point is when I added, in the second half of my cycle, estrogen and progesterone. And then while I was getting help with that's when I was doing initially all my elimination diet stuff. I really changed my diet around. It was around the time I got diagnosed with celiac disease. I was doing a lot more work on myself and my approach to life and anxiety and my beliefs and all of the stuff that we talk about. And then I gradually transitioned from that, and then really never, haven't had the spotting resolved. And so for that reason, I'm a huge fan of using them when you absolutely need to, but that then after that, it's time to kind of put your cards into all the more nitty-gritty stuff that will actually get you long-term results, which is what we're actually after, and that's what we really want to impact. So that's the thing with birth control and other hormones. Hopefully that you found that helpful. We do actually have a small program that we do. It's just a 4-part program of videos, and it's me teaching about how to safely transition off birth control. It's called Safely Stopping Birth Control. We weren't very creative in the name. So if you head on over to zestyginger.com, you can find that, or just shoot us an email, support@zestyginger.com, and we can hook you up with that. So I hope that you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for joining these pod classes. Make sure you let your girlfriends know about it so that we can get the word out about more and more hormonal health and making sure all our ladies are taken care of. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Hey, thanks for stopping by this Podclass. If you are ready to dig deeper into your health, really understand your cycle, stop guessing with random supplements, and start testing, our Healthy Hormones group starts September 27th. You can find more details at zestyginger.com/healthy hormones and find out if this is the place for you. And as always, we offer free 20-minute consultations, so jump on the phone with us and we'll help you decide if it's a good fit.